Hi everybody, it's Sarah Cray with Let's Make Art, and I teach watercolor, a new tutorial every week, and this week we are doing galaxy hair.
Dang!
We have Michael here who's working our cameras for us, and in this project we will complete this in 5 steps. So our very first step, we will be painting the wash for the hair. The second step, we will be putting in the shadows on the face and the body. Third step, we will blend them out to get a little bit of a value range. Our fourth step, I will be going in and working on the mouth and the eyes. The fifth step, we will be adding stars to our galaxy hair. For the materials that I'm using, I have a round 6 and a round 2 brush. These are my go-to brushes. I do most of the tutorials with these two. So if you're planning on painting with me for a while, I highly recommend you get them.
If you're OG, they used to be called Keith and Hank.
Keith and Hank, yes!
And then they were Brock and Keenan.
And then they were Brock and Keenan. Who remembers those names? That was a long time ago. Okay, we are using 4 colors in this project. Our brand is Dandelion Paint Company, which is our own house brand of paint. They're liquid watercolors, super vibrant. And our first color is Tahoe Blue. Our second color is Deep Yellow, which is such a good yellow. Our third color is Black. And our last color is Bleed Proof White. I'm not going to do a swatch because it's white. It's white on white paper, but I'll put the little tub here. Okay, so we are going to trace our outline onto our paper, and then we'll do our oath, and then we will paint. So you're going to tape your outline to your watercolor paper, and your watercolor paper, you're going to want to paint on the rougher side because it's a cold press paper. Cold press watercolor paper has a texture to it, so you want to paint on the side that has the most texture. You're going to put your graphite paper dark shiny side down. You are going to take a pen and press down and trace. Now, depending on how hard you're pressing down, that will tell you how dark your line will be on your paper. So I was pressing down really hard. That's how dark my line is. I will press down harder so you guys can see what's going on camera. But for those of you at home, try and make it as light as you possibly can. Watercolor is transparent. So any dark pencil lines, I mean everything, transparent means you'll be able to see through it. So that's why we want our tracing to be as light as possible so then our dark lines don't show through. Now I will say that graphite paper can sometimes be a little bit sensitive, which means that even if you're pressing lightly, you still get a dark line. So a couple things to help with that is, 1, reuse the same graphite paper over and over again. It gets less sensitive with age. Another trick that you can do is, instead of using a hard tip pen to trace, you can use like a felt tip marker or a soft tip marker. That is just a naturally softer tip, which means the line won't be as hard. Another thing that you can do is not use graphite paper at all. You can use a light box to trace. Some people prefer that. Even a window would work just fine. I honestly, personally prefer graphite paper. I feel like I can see the lines better than trying to trace through a light box. But again, it's all personal preference, and there is nothing wrong with whatever you choose works best for you. Now on this outline, I have some hard lines and I have some dashed lines. My dashed lines are there to give you an idea of where there is a darker value or a shadow. So it's not necessary for you to trace them in. You can if that's helpful for you, or you can just keep your outline handy and use it in reference simultaneously with your reference photo, so you can kind of visualize where some shadows go. Again, just do what works best for you. There's no right or wrong, really. The other thing about tracing is sometimes you forget a line when you're painting, or I'm sorry, tracing. You'll forget to like trace an area and then you remove your outline.
Wait, and then it's misaligned?
Yes.
Yes.
That was a good one.
Thank you.
If that happens to you, just eyeball it. It's really not a huge deal. I really want you to look at these outlines as a way to, as a guide. It's not a coloring book page. Don't feel like it has to be perfectly within the lines. I don't want you to stay within the lines. I just want to give you a rough guide to help you feel confident in painting, because drawing is kind of a difficult skill and it takes time to master, and I just don't want that to stop people from enjoying watercolor, because watercolor is so fun. So don't let that stop you. Don't let drawing stop you. Okay, I feel good about my outline. Does that show up on the camera pretty well?
Yep.
Okay, cool. But I am going to keep my outline handy. The other thing that I have near me, if you guys have it, is sea salt. You're going to get some cool textures. If you look at the reference photo here, those little kind of like blooms of explosion, that's from salt. So I'm going to show you what that does, okay? So if you have some handy, you can use it. You can try table salt. It doesn't react necessarily the same way. I have used both. You will see a reaction, just not as strong. Oh, we got to do our oath.
I was going to say, I'm feeling like I should compare my work to other people. Do you have any words of wisdom?
Yes. So before we get started with our painting, I'm going to need you all to take an oath with me. So if you can raise your right hand and repeat after me. I promise to be kind to myself.
I promise to be kind to myself.
I promise not to compare my work.
I promise not to compare my work.
And I promise to have fun.
And I promise to have fun.
And I love starting that way because sometimes we don't realize it, but we start comparing ourselves long before we even take a paintbrush to the paper, and that's not fair. And comparison is the thief of joy. And also, painting and art is a learned skill that takes time, and so for you to compare yourself with anybody else is not a fair comparison in and of itself, because everybody learns at different paces and are on different journeys. So appreciate this time, give yourself the freedom to play and learn and have fun, and that's all this is about. And if you're really interested in improving your art skill, it is just a practice. And if you keep showing up here every week, you will get better. That's just how it works over time.
Also, better is subjective.
Yeah.
You know?
And I also want to point out that learning a new skill is not perfectly linear, where your work is going to slowly see improvement every single painting. That's not how it works. So if you felt really good and then you're like feeling like you're digressing, that is normal. Just stick with it. It could be just what it is that we're painting. It could be maybe just the time in your life, but learning a new skill is very much up and down, like this. Oh, and it's for me too, someone who has been painting for years. Okay, so just letting you know you're not alone. Everything you're feeling is normal. Okay, now let's get started. So I'm gonna grab some Tahoe blue, and I'm gonna grab a little bit of black, and I'm gonna mix that together because I wanna get this dark value. And if you look at my reference photo here, the darkest value is closest to her face here. And then it gets lighter as it goes out. The top is kind of dark right here, but I'm gonna start really dark close to her face and then let the values get lighter as I move out. So I'm gonna mix like a dark blue, kind of like a navy. Okay, and then I'm actually gonna start by putting just water down first by her face. I have learned with liquid watercolors, and I'm not entirely sure the rhyme or reason, but if you put water down first and then if you drop in your dark value, it stays darker than if you were to just paint that dark value straight onto a dry piece of paper.
That's obviously due to the quadro dynamical fantastic morphism.
That's exactly right, Michael. You guessed.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, and then to make a lighter value with watercolor, all you gotta do is add some water. So I put down my dark value, and then I'm kind of just like blending out. And I'm gonna do kind of a little section at a time here. Now this This project is so fun because we are going to drop in bright colors and we are going to drop in water drops, and we're really going to celebrate watercolor and this element of accidental art. So really embrace the blooms and the textures that you get. Really embrace everything about this. It's doing the work for you. It's so fabulous. I'm gonna add a tiny bit of yellow into my blue to make kind of like a green. I want kind of like that, you know, on, I don't know, I feel like with like galaxy, and Michael is into astronomy here, so he's probably gonna correct me on some of the terminology that I'm using. But I feel like there's different colors when you look at like pictures of galaxy where there's maybe moments of red or green or things like that. And so that's what these green hints are here. It's just when there's strong other color happening.
Those are giant concentrations of gaseous elements.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and in astronomy, you can put different filters on your eyepieces to be able to either highlight or see through those things.
That's
like an
cool.
oxygen filter or like, you know.
Oh, and don't forget, when it's still wet like this is where you're gonna wanna put a little bit of salt. Now these are big, what's the word I'm looking for?
Thick boy salt.
Yes, but they're big,
Granules.
granules, thank you. So they're gonna create like a little bit larger impact. Also, the thing with salt is that right when you put it on the watercolor, it doesn't do anything. It won't do anything until it dries. And it's also one of those funny things where sometimes, depending on how much pigment is being used, how much water is being used, all of those things, it reacts differently. So it's possible that you put some salt down and it does a lot, and it's possible you put some salt down and it doesn't actually do that much. And you just never know until it dries. But I don't know, I think that's kind of the fun of it.
Have you ever like caked salt onto it, like just a ton of salt?
Yes.
Does it do cool stuff? Or
Yes, actually in one of our projects, I believe it's called Winter Snowstorm. I think even in the directions, in the step-by-steps, I was just like, step 2, use an obscene amount of salt. And you just like,
pour it on.
Yes, and you get the coolest textures.
I already love her hair.
Yeah, isn't it just a beauty?
Her expression is so serene as well. It's so good.
I do love this project. I've been honestly waiting to kind of do this one in my personal work before starting Let's Make Art. I still do like illustrations and stuff and sell prints, and I did this whole series called Internauts, but I also nicknamed them Galaxy Girls. And it was just a few different women with their hair in a galaxy style, and I just love it. I think it's so fun. It's freeing. You get to really allow the watercolors to, one, do the hard work for you, and then like really embrace it for what it is. And so with using Bleed Proof White as one of our paint colors this month, I was just like, oh, it's time to do one of these ladies.
In case you're curious, intronaut means explorer of self.
Yeah. Michael, you were the one that actually came up for the name for those.
Totally.
I love that, explorer of self.
Cosmonaut, astronaut, they're all, space explorer. And intronaut is, turning inwards.
You also, I just realized that maybe you're watching this and being like, Sarah, why are you painting so fast? And two things. When you get more comfortable with doing something, you're okay with moving a little bit faster. The second thing is that when I'm doing like big washes like this that are really embracing different textures and not being too, as Jessie would say, like too precious with it, it allows for more accidental art elements to take place, and it allows me the freedom to just embrace whatever happens instead of trying to control every moment. So I recommend for you to really let go in this project and use this as an experimentation, which is, what would happen if I just like painted this really fast? Or what would happen if I did this or this? Like, I feel like we learn best when, one, we're not holding ourselves to this crazy standard, and two, when we're really being driven by curiosity. That doesn't mean it's going to be a success the entire time. That doesn't mean it's going to turn out perfect the entire time. But what that means is you are really learning and enjoying the learning process. And remember, the worst thing that can happen is it's a piece of paper, and you throw that piece of paper away. That's it. So allow yourself to explore. Okay, ooh, you can kind of see how the salt is drying on this side. Do you see that?
Yes.
Isn't that cool?
Yes, totally.
Okay, so really quick, I want to point out that if you want to do another layer of color, let's say you do this and you're like, okay, that's pretty, but I really wanted her hair to be more vibrant, you can totally come in and do a second layer. Like, this is your painting. Feel free to do that. I will say that for like the salt textures or any blooms that you have going on, that will create more blooms or kind of blend out the blooms that you already have on your paper. That's okay. As long as you guys know that, there's nothing wrong with doing it. Sometimes I just feel like doing a little extra pop of color is just what a painting needs. So I'll go back in, do another layer.
Sarah.
Yeah.
I have the perfect quote for the ambiance of this painting.
Okay, love it. Let's go.
It's by Alan Watts.
Okay.
It says, "Through our eyes, the universe is perceiving itself. Through our ears, the universe is listening to its harmonies. We are the witness through which the universe becomes conscious of its glory, of its magnificence."
Michael, that was beautiful.
That was good, right?
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh yeah, she is looking so great. Okay.
All right, so I'm also looking, we were talking about the colors of gases in space, right?
Mm-hmm.
So oxygen usually shows up as a green tint, hydrogen as red, and nitrogen as blue.
Ooh, so we got a lot of oxygen going on in here.
Oxygen's greenish.
Yeah.
And then,
Oh,
nitrogen's
duh,
blue.
I didn't hear the blue part. You're like, wrong. Okay, I'm gonna let that dry and see what happens. Now, I do wanna point out that there's some details going on we have some gorgeous curls at the corners here and a little bit within here. I'm gonna wait for this to dry before I add those. But let me show you how to do them really quick if you wanna do them now. So I'm gonna switch to my round 2 and just kind of like on some of these ends here, you're gonna kind of wave your brush back and forth like this.
Little tornadoes.
Yeah, kind of like little tornadoes, but this is the tricky thing, and I maybe stress this too much, is when we're creating textures around the edges of something, our brain is gonna want us to do the same exact texture, evenly spread out, the same length across the entire thing. And you're gonna have to work really hard to be like, no brain, this is not supposed to be evenly spaced. This is not supposed to be perfectly the same thing, copy and pasted. So like, as you're adding little curls, be aware of that. Think about like, is the mark I'm making too similar across the board? And if it is, then switch it up. Make it wider, make it shorter, make it a different value, different things like that. Because I'm telling you that if you did an even thing across that was the same kind of curl shape across this entire thing, it is going to look a little bit funny. That's just how it goes. So, okay. So it's just, yeah, it's just kind of like a wave. All right. let's move on to step 2. We're gonna do the face shadows and the shoulder. So I'm gonna switch my round 2, or keep using my round 2 if you were doing those curls with me. I'm gonna use this dark blue black mixture that I already have mixed on my palette. And just being aware of my wrist, because it's gonna be hard not to plant it right into your painting. I'm going to, kind of like these hard lines that I have here for my outline, I'm gonna go over them with this too. So we're kind of just defining features right now.
I noticed you didn't do a solid jawline. Why?
I didn't want to do a solid jawline because we blend out some of this. Let me think about that. That's a great question, and I want to make sure that I'm saying the right thing. You can do a solid jawline. It's totally up to you. I think sometimes I get nervous to do thick, solid lines through the middle of something because it really affects the overall form. And so if I like completed this, it wouldn't look bad. I just like to do hints of things. And now that I think about it, that's probably more just a personal preference. So if you wanted to do a solid line, I don't think it would be an issue.
I remember, we've talked about this before, but I remember watching something with you on the elements of design, and the guy said that he wants to portray something with the least amount of information possible. Mm-hmm. That's what I thought immediately. And for me, I tend personally to go more towards illustrative. That's why I like loose paintings. That's why I like giving the viewer just enough information they need to understand what's going on. But again, that's a personal preference. And for this painting specifically, this isn't like a, I don't know if you can tell, this isn't a realistic painting, right? Where we're playing with colors. She has galaxy hair. So when that happens, I really give myself freedom to play with things like that, where I'm not totally creating form with values. I'm not totally making this feel super three-dimensional. I'm just giving enough information so the viewer can see what's going on. And I'm doing her nose right now, and I'm realizing I didn't do the outline of her other nostril. When I outlined it, no big deal, I'm just gonna put it in. Now when you get to her nostrils, her actual nostrils, you want to make sure that they're a little bit thicker to indicate that those are actual holes. Then we're going to do her eyes. Her eyebrows. And I do a little like hint of little hairs on kind of where the eyebrows meet in the middle. But again, this is more an illustrative style. We don't have to make it too realistic, so don't stress too much about this. I'm just going to outline her lips. And what I also love about this painting is, like, if you don't feel very good about your water control and your blending or things like this, you don't have to do any more on this face if you don't want to. Like, even giving the hint of features is enough. So I want to give you guys that opportunity where if you're looking at these kind of soft values blended out and you're like, yeah, I don't know about that. You don't have to do it. You don't, because this is beautiful, just how it is already. So don't, if you're not ready for that, that's okay. Okay, and then I'm gonna add some water to this blue just to get a lighter value, because now I'm gonna put hints of dimension and features in. One of them is going to be the eyelid. What step are we on?
Well, I'm still on step 2 because I'm not fully blending out.
Okay.
I'm just kind of putting in a lighter value. So I just want to put the hint of some of these dotted lines in. I'm going to go down to the collarbone. Okay. Okay. Now we're moving on to step 3. So I'm going to switch to my 6, and then using the color that I've already laid down, I'm going to blend out and create a lighter value to give me a slight hint of three-dimensionality. So like along the edge of the face here. And you can pick up color from the hard lines that we put out. You can even pull color from her hair. If none of that is actually pulling, you can pick up color from your palette.
I've done this in the past where I've mentioned something to the crew and hopefully someone paints it.
Yeah.
I want someone to do a portrait of Prince in this style.
A what?
Prince, the artist.
Oh, Prince. I was thinking of like art print.
No.
Okay.
I just feel like this style is perfect for Prince.
Totally.
You know what I mean?
But do it purple.
Totally.
Okay, and then on this neck here, this is where it's going to be probably the darkest value. So I'm pulling a little bit more color, just showing that shadow. Okay. And then along the back here, blending that out, the front of the shoulder. And again, I'm just using water.
Here's a future question from the group.
Okay.
Dear Sarah,
Yeah.
I accidentally put a ton of water in and it's bleeding all over the neck. Help me. What do I do?
Grab your paper towel, grab the extra water. If you put too much and it's like either pooling, like a pool, or if it's pulling too much color, take a breath, grab your paper towel, soak it up, and then when it is dry, go back in. But don't go back in too soon or else it's just going to keep bleeding and spreading. Okay, and then I'm going to kind of blend out around the eyelids, following my dotted line. You can look at the reference photo here if you need a little reminder of kind of where some of these shadows are going. Also, I want to point out we haven't put in the eyelashes yet, and that will help shape the eyes a little bit more. So if you're feeling stressed out about your eyes, don't yet until we put eyelashes in. And then there's a little shadow along the nose. So on this corner, just on the front, and then kind of coming up. Because again, just trying to give hints of features and form. Enough to give her a little bit of shape. Okay. Just making sure there's no other place. I also did the forehead a little bit, right at that hairline. I don't know if you guys saw that. Okay, I feel pretty good about that. Now, I also want to point out that in this step for blending, is it possible that you blended out so much that we lost the hard lines? Yes, that is possible. If that happens, don't worry, let it dry, go back in and put in that hard line again. Okay, we're moving on to step 4. I'm going to do the eyes and the mouth. You want to make sure that it's dry around these areas before you start. I'm going to switch to my round 2. I'm going to pick up some paint, and I'm just going to follow the outline as best I can. We're just going to do hints of eyelashes, and same thing. Don't think that your eyelashes have to be evenly spaced and the same length across the eye. That's not natural. So it's just going to be hints and then a little bit more gathered on the ends. And then same thing on the other side.
It's crazy how much that adds.
Doesn't it? That's why I didn't want you guys to judge really the eyes before we did this part. Okay.
There's so much blankness on the face. I feel like it would stress me out to be doing these hard lines like that.
It is scary. It is scary to just like commit to something so hard. Yes. But sometimes I feel like painting, it's almost like you fake it till you make it. It's like, even sometimes I have to be like, I can do this. I can draw a hard line on this painting. That ain't no thing. You know what I mean? And you just commit and you go for it. Because sometimes being really timid and stuff makes it a little bit harder. Okay, now we're gonna do the lips. So when it comes to lips, I wanna give the lips a little bit of dimension and volume as well. And so if you look at, if you're trying to make anything round in shape in general, usually the edges are a darker value and the middle is what's highlighted. And that will help us know that it rounds, it's coming out, okay? Because that highlight is hitting kind of more in the middle. So I'm gonna take some color and put it kind of on the corners of the mouth, and then I'm going to blend. And if you did the B tutorial with us, this is what we did across the entire body. And I think actually, Michael, you even were in the tutorial for that one.
That tutorial proved to me that I can do hard things, because I totally did not think I could paint that bee, and it turned out awesome. It
turned out so great. Everybody, if I remember correctly, like, I feel like everyone felt really good about what they came up with. So again, the lightest value is in the middle to give the hint of form. Now I will say that the shape of the gap between the lips will inform the overall shape. So if it bleeds a little, just try and control that bleeding, wait for it to dry, and then kind of go back in and redefine it. So that's what I'm seeing happening here, is that dark value is kind of blending a lot, and it's kind of adjusting the overall shape of my lips. So I'm just trying to lift the color up a little bit, waiting for that to dry, and then I'll go back in. Okay. And then before we move on to putting our stars into the hair, I'm just going to take a step back into like the face and kind of re-put in some lines that blended out. So one of them that blended out was right here along my jaw, like so. And then I feel like I kind of need to define this area just a little bit more, kind of right underneath.
Talking about those strong lines on a blank face, how it's kind of scary.
Yeah.
Reminds me of my favorite Ned Stark quote.
Yeah.
I remember in the beginning of that show, which is Game of Thrones, in case you guys are curious, I think it's Bran asks him, is it possible for you to be brave and scared at the same time? He said that's the only time you can be brave.
Yeah, Michael, coming in with these good quotes.
Thank you. I didn't make either of them up.
So I'm just kind of defining this.
On an unrelated note, if any of you are curious to visit Missouri, on Sunday it's going to be -11.
So that's fun.
That's fun. I love this painting so much. I know I say it every time. This is probably one of my favorite paintings you do.
Yeah?
Yes, I love this.
I love it too. Okay. Yeah, this is feeling good. All right. Now I need to go back in. Now another thing with these lips is if you have a really dark outline across the whole thing, that will tend to flatten it a little bit. So just giving you guys a heads up. I've kind of blended mine out, but I can still see that there is a pretty strong outline. So I'm just going to try and match the values within, so that doesn't seem like that dark outline is overpowering the whole thing. So I'm going to try and darken up the values within the lips to match it. Little shadow here. But just in general, I'm realizing now where I'm like, man, lips are tricky. I should probably do like a whole thing just on lips.
If you need a model, I could use my luscious lips.
But also, I just want to say, like, be a little bit careful with your highlight. We don't want it to be so perfectly centered across the whole thing that it looks like the Star Wars character that just do the little mark in the middle of there. You know what I'm saying? So the highlight is going to be in the center, but it's going to be more like this, like rounded, instead of straight up and down. Does that make sense? It's going to be across here.
I'm having another idea. What if you paint Star Wars characters this style, and then you can do that on purpose?
That would be cool. And if you get your highlight lost, the great thing is we have bleed-proof white in this box. So you can just put it back in. A little highlight on that lip will really make it pop. Okay, I need to stop messing with this, but I feel pretty good.
I hope you gave that preface to just skip the shading if they wanted. I hope you get to this point and you brave up and do it, because it's awesome. And if you mess up, who cares?
It's just a piece of paper. And you can start over. We give you guys a few different...
Just add so much depth to her.
I know, honestly, I really was going to do just hard lines, like that was going to be the project. And then when I was painting this, I was just like, no, we just got to put just a medium value in there, just a hint of it to really make her feel like a form. And I'm really glad I did it. But it is slightly more difficult. So if you're feeling brave, go for it. If you're not, no shame. Okay. Cool. Cool. Oh, I'm gonna actually do her nostrils again because that kind of blended out a lot. There we go. All right, now we get to the fun part, which is putting in the stars. Now, if you want, you can kind of use a paper towel to cover the face if you don't want white speckles everywhere. Please remove any expensive things that are nearby. Michael always makes fun of me because I have white splatters of paint on my laptop or, iPad. He's like, what were you doing? I was like, painting.
Or all over my beautiful camera that she asked to borrow.
Oh, yeah.
Or all over my laptop.
I'm working on it. I'm trying to be better. Okay, so I dipped my round 6 in some bleed-proof white. And just so you know, bleed-proof white is supposed to be thick, kind of like an acrylic paint, maybe even thicker.
What is it supposed to be?
Thick. So it's not dried out. And if yours is a little bit dry, you can add water to reconstitute it. And then to make it a little bit easier to use, I'm going to actually dip some water in and dip my paintbrush in to make it not as thick, so it will like flick off. And then I'm going to hit my finger on here and do white splatters. And if it's not coming off, then you need a little bit more water. You can also use a toothbrush for this. Okay, so we got our good splatters in. And then what I like to do to really give it a final touch is I like to go in and do a little bit bigger dots. So I'm gonna put my round 6 down and move to my round 2. Pick up some white and just using the tip of my brush, put some in. And you could even do, I mean, this is where it's fun too, because you could do constellations in here. You can just really, you can even do like, there's so many options. Sorry, I'm just thinking of like connecting dots to create forms or names or different things like that. Also, I want to point out that this bleed-proof white, because it's white, it's going to pop up more where there's a darker value underneath. So you can see on the edges here, it's not showing up really well, but when I put my dot in here, it's poking out pretty good. I'm gonna make this a shooting star. Boop.
In real life, these like nebulas, these giant big gaseous clouds are what collapse into stars, right? Mm-hmm. And so where you would see these dark sections, there would be a ton of tiny little pinprick stars forming. They call them star nurseries.
Star nurseries. That's pretty. Okay. I just realized one thing, which is I did some beautiful curly details on this side. I didn't do it on this side, so I'm going to go back in and add them. So kind of just where it seems to kind of gather out. Again, you can mess with the values. And I'm even going to put some in a darker value within. Doing one more layer of dark value right around that face, really make it feel like we know that the hair goes in and has form as well. Again, your brain is going to want to do this a lot because it's fun to add this texture, but be aware. Step away for a second if you need to before you commit to doing like 50, you know. As I keep adding.
Do as I say, not as I do.
I'm going to do a little more on the top over here. And also, I mean, hair is not perfect, as in you're not going to have perfect curls on everything. Like, I don't have curly hair, unfortunately, but my husband does, and his hair, like, sometimes he gets really perfect ringlets, and then other times it like is a little bit straight and then a curl, or a little bit straighter at the end. There's different things in there, so like I don't want you guys to think that these curls need to be completely perfect. There's going to be like a soft wave on some of them. Some areas are going to be tighter than others.
I feel like it wants to be curly all the time. It's just if I like lean my head on something.
That's when it...
Curly crew, you know what I'm talking about.
Okay. And I'm going to actually define this curl a little bit more that was going along the edge here of her face. Kind of got blended out. And I'm actually going to bring her cheekbone in just a little bit. You can also, like, if you're looking at the overall shape of her face, you can adjust it by like bringing the hair in. Like, I feel like this right cheekbone is just sticking out a little bit too much. I want to bring it in, so I'm going to bring the hairline in. There we go. That feels better. She's done.
She's beautiful.
You guys, I really hope you loved this project. I loved making it. I can't wait to see what you guys come up with. If you're on Instagram, we would love to see it. So share it. You can tag us at Let's Go Make Art or hashtag Let's Make Art. We have a wonderful Facebook group with the sole purpose of sharing each other's work, of cheering each other on, learning from each other, and just sharing every step of the way. We get this idea that art is a skill that you're born with or you're not, because people usually don't share the failures. They don't share the learning process. They don't share all of the steps. We really only feel comfortable sharing when it's perfect. And we have to get rid of that if we want to understand that this just takes practice and time. And so even if it's not perfect, share it anyway. Share what you learned, or maybe if you feel comfortable, ask for suggestions on what you can do to make it better. We're all here to support you, and I really appreciate you guys painting with me, and I'll see you guys next week. Bye.
Bye.